After she dumped me, she wanted friends with benefits. I went full no contact, then started dating her sister. What happened at their family reunion was pure karma. Sup, Reddit. My ex wanted to downgrade me to friends with benefits after publicly humiliating me. I blocked her completely and ended up with her sister instead. The family reunion 3 months later was a masterpiece of karma. Here's the whole story. I'm Ethan, 29 male, and I teach wilderness survival and environmental education in the Colorado mountains. It's not Silicon Valley money or a corner office job, but I'm doing what I love, connecting people with nature and teaching them they can handle themselves outside the digital bubble. The pay's decent, nothing crazy, but between my base salary and private courses I run on weekends, I clear around $72,000 a year. Not bad for someone who spends most days outside. My job isn't what most people picture when they hear teacher. I run a wilderness survival program through a state conservation department, working with schools, scout groups, and outdoor recreation centers. Spring and summer, I'm teaching kids how to build emergency shelters, purify water, identify poisonous plants, navigate without GPS. Fall and winter, I'm running adult courses. Weekend survival intensives where city folks learn fire starting, animal tracking, cold weather camping. The private courses are where I make real money. $800 per person for a 2-day intensive, running 6 to 8 people per session. Do the math on that. I run about 2 sessions monthly during peak season, sometimes 3. That adds anywhere from $9,600 to $14,400 to my base salary of $48,000. Not exactly poverty wages, but that becomes important later. I live in a cabin I bought 5 years ago for $180,000 when the market dipped. 1 bedroom, but it's got 20 acres of forest attached, a creek running through the property, and enough wildlife that I can teach field identification without leaving home. Previous owner was a retired forest ranger who'd maintained trails and built observation platforms throughout the property. Perfect setup for someone in my line of work. The cabin needed serious work when I bought it. Roof leaked in 3 places, plumbing was questionable at best, electrical needed complete upgrading to handle modern appliances. Spent 2 years fixing it up myself, learning as I went. YouTube University plus trial and error, calling my dad when I was truly stuck. Now it's solid, efficient, and completely mine. No mortgage, just property taxes and utilities, running me about $400 monthly total. Financial freedom looks different for everyone. For me, it's owning land outright and working a job that doesn't make me want to drive off a cliff every Monday morning. I'd been with Whitney, 27 female, for 3 years. She's a lifestyle blogger who branded herself as this authentic mountain girl who loved nature and simple living on social media. Her Instagram feed was all rustic cabins, hiking boots on trail markers, sunrise photos from remote wilderness locations, and captions about finding yourself away from civilization. She had about 85,000 followers who ate it up like candy. Reality? She preferred upscale Denver restaurants to any hiking trail. The outdoor photos were staged productions, usually taken within 50 feet of the parking lot after I'd done all the actual hiking to scout locations. She'd spend an hour getting the lighting perfect, change outfits 3 times, and we'd be done before we'd walked a quarter mile. Then we'd head straight back to civilization, so she could spend 3 hours editing photos and writing captions to make it look like she'd spent all day communing with nature. Her actual lifestyle was designer everything. $300 yoga pants she never did yoga in, $800 hiking boots that had never seen actual mud, a white Range Rover she insisted on leasing because it photographed better than practical vehicles. She made decent money from sponsored posts, maybe $4,000 to $5,000 monthly when things were going well, but she spent like she was pulling tech executive money. Credit cards were constantly maxed out, and she had this unspoken expectation that I should cover more of our expenses since I owned property and had stability. I met Whitney at an outdoor gear expo in Denver 3 years prior. I was there representing my survival program, doing a demonstration on wilderness first aid. She approached me afterward, complimented my presentation, asked intelligent questions about wildlife safety protocols. I was genuinely impressed. She seemed authentically interested in conservation work, not just the Instagram aesthetic of it. First few dates were solid. She laughed at my stories about teaching kids to identify animal tracks in fresh snow, asked thoughtful questions about which survival skills were most critical for beginners, seemed fascinated by my cabin and the work I was doing. Looking back, she was probably just gathering content for her Mountain Girl brand, but at the time I thought I'd found someone who understood why this work mattered. 6 months in, the cracks started appearing. She'd complain about my work schedule. Weekends were prime time for my private survival courses, which meant I wasn't available for brunch with her influencer friends. She started making comments about my truck being too basic and suggesting I upgrade to something more photogenic for her content. Asked why I didn't install a hot tub at the cabin because every mountain property needs one for the aesthetic. But she'd also have these moments where she seemed genuinely into what we had. She'd show up at the cabin with groceries and actually cook dinner. She'd edit photos of my survival courses for my professional website. She'd curl up with me on the couch and talk about maybe collaborating on content that combined her audience with my expertise. Those moments kept me invested, thinking if I just gave it time and showed her I was serious about our future, she'd stop treating everything like content and start treating it like actual life. By year 2, I was overlooking a lot. The fact that she'd maxed out 3 credit cards. The way she'd ghost me for entire weekends when she went to influencer conferences in other states. How she'd ask me to take her to expensive restaurants, post photos acting like she'd paid, then expect me to actually cover the bill. I was making excuses because I thought we were building towards something real. Our 3rd anniversary was approaching, and I wanted to prove I was committed to making this relationship work long term. Whitney had been dropping hints for months about wanting something special and memorable for our anniversary. Translation: she wanted content for her feed and bragging rights with her influencer friends, who were all in relationships with tech guys and finance bros. I spent weeks planning what I thought would be a perfect weekend. Friday night at a romantic cabin. Not mine, but this rustic rental property about 2 hours deeper into the mountains. Real wilderness setting, no cell service, the whole authentic experience she claimed to love. Then, Saturday, I'd booked dinner at Meridian, one of Denver's most exclusive restaurants. The kind of place where reservations required a 2-month wait list and a single meal cost what most families spend on groceries for a week. The reservations alone took planning. Meridian doesn't take online bookings. You have to call during specific hours and hope they have availability. I called at exactly 10 a.m. on the dot 2 months before our anniversary, got put on hold for 15 minutes, and secured a table for 4. I'd invited Whitney to bring along Brianna and Ashley, 2 of her influencer friends, thinking I was supporting her career by helping her maintain those relationships. The meal itself was going to run me close to $600 after splitting the bill with her friend's portion. I'd been setting aside money from my private courses for months to make this happen. This wasn't just anniversary celebration. This was me showing her I could provide the lifestyle she wanted while still doing work I loved. Friday at the rental cabin was tolerable, though Whitney spent more time staging photos than enjoying the actual surroundings. She brought 4 different outfit changes for an overnight trip, set up ring lights powered by portable battery packs, spent 3 hours getting candid shots of herself reading by the fireplace, looking pensively out the window, discovering wildflowers I'd pointed out to her. I told myself this came with the territory. Her job was social media. She needed content. I could live with that. The disaster struck Saturday night at Meridian. We arrived at the restaurant right on time. I'd picked her up from her Denver apartment at 5 p.m., drove us into the city, found street parking after circling for 20 minutes. Whitney checked her makeup 3 times in the car mirror before we went inside. Brianna and Ashley were already seated when we arrived. I'd met them maybe 4 or 5 times over the years. They were part of Whitney's influencer circle, always dressed expensively, always talking about brand deals and follower counts. They made small talk with me at gatherings, but it was clear they considered me beneath their social circle. Just the broke boyfriend who couldn't keep up with their lifestyle expectations. From the moment we sat down, something felt wrong. Whitney was glued to her phone, tapping away furiously, barely acknowledging my presence. She seemed far more interested in impressing Brianna and Ashley than celebrating with the guy who'd spent 3 years of his life with her. The menus arrived. No prices listed, always a bad sign. The waitress explained the evening's specials in that overly formal way. Expensive restaurants train their staff to speak. Everything sounded like it cost more than my monthly utilities. "So Ethan," Brianna started, her tone dripping with practiced condescension, "you're still doing that whole outdoor education thing, right?" I took the bait, thinking it was genuine curiosity. Explained how much I enjoyed teaching survival skills to people of all ages, how the work helped city folks reconnect with skills humans had relied on for thousands of years. Talked about a recent course where I'd taught a group of corporate executives how to build emergency shelters and purify water. They'd initially treated it like a joke, but by the end they were genuinely engaged, asking serious questions about wilderness safety. But when I looked across the table at Whitney, her expression had gone ice cold. She was staring at me like I'd just committed a serious social violation in front of people whose approval she desperately needed. "Are you seriously talking about that here?" she interrupted with a forced laugh. You sound like you're living in the past, Ethan. Look, Brianna's boyfriend just secured Series B funding for his third startup. Ashley is dating an investment banker who just bought a condo in Aspen. And you? You're talking about teaching people to make campfires. The silence that followed was physically uncomfortable. The waitress, who'd been approaching to take drink orders, actually backed away. Nobody at the table moved. I could feel other diners glancing over, sensing drama. I kept my voice completely level. I'm talking about something meaningful. Education that might literally save someone's life someday. Conservation work that protects ecosystems. That matters more than another tech startup. Meaning doesn't pay the bills, Ethan, Whitney said, leaning forward with this practiced cruelty in her voice. I've been patient, thinking eventually you'd want something bigger. But you're still playing in the dirt making $35,000 a year, while everyone else is building actual wealth. The number wasn't even accurate. She'd either forgotten or deliberately ignored everything I'd told her about my income. Between my salary and private courses, I was clearing over $70,000 annually, living mortgage-free on property I owned outright. But accuracy didn't matter to her anymore. This was a performance for her friends, establishing that I wasn't good enough for their social tier. I took a breath. Maybe we want fundamentally different things from life. Definitely, she said, leaning back with pure venom in her smile. That's why I think we should just be friends with benefits from now on. You can provide comfort and companionship when I need it, and I'll be free to find someone more ambitious to actually build a future with. Someone who fits better with my public image. Friends with benefits. After 3 years together. At our anniversary dinner. At a restaurant I'd saved up months to afford. In front of her friends who were now staring at their plates in secondhand embarrassment. Even Brianna looked uncomfortable, which was saying something. Ashley was suddenly very interested in the breadbasket. I pulled out cash, $200 for our share of the meal we hadn't even ordered yet, and placed it deliberately on the table. Your belongings will be packed and ready at the cabin. Come get them whenever you're ready. Don't be so dramatic, Ethan, Whitney called out as I stood to leave, her voice carrying across the restaurant. This is why you'll always be stuck where you are. You can't handle adult conversations about realistic expectations. I didn't turn around, didn't respond, just walked out. Behind me, I heard the murmur of voices. Did that really just happen? That was incredibly cruel. I can't believe she said that to him. The drive back to the cabin was 2 hours of complete silence. Mix of rage, humiliation, and this strange sense of relief washing over me in waves. Like I'd been carrying something impossibly heavy for years and finally got permission to put it down. The anger was surface level. Underneath was this calm clarity that I'd just witnessed who Whitney really was when the filter came off. By the time I got home, my phone had already started buzzing. Text messages stacking up. Ethan, I'm sorry, that came out wrong. You're overreacting to a simple suggestion. We need to talk about this like adults. Don't throw away 3 years over one conversation. You're being incredibly immature right now. I was just being honest about our future. Why are you acting like the victim here? 17 missed calls by midnight. 43 text messages cycling through weak apologies, manipulation, and accusations that I was ruining what we had by refusing to accept her generous offer. I read through them once, methodically, like reviewing evidence. Then I blocked her number completely. Blocked her Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, every social media platform I could think of. No explanation, no final conversation, no closure. Just complete digital silence. I wasn't playing her games anymore. Wasn't giving her ammunition to twist into content for her followers. Sunday morning, I started packing her belongings. She'd gradually moved about 40% of her stuff into the cabin over the 3 years. Designer clothes that cost more than my monthly property taxes, skincare products that required refrigeration, makeup that needed special storage, enough ring lights and photography equipment to run a small studio. Each box I packed was a reminder of how much money she burned through, while calling my stable income poverty wages. As I sealed the last box with packing tape, I heard a vehicle pull up outside. I looked out the window expecting to see her white Range Rover, but it was a silver Subaru instead. Harper, Whitney's older sister, stepped out. I barely knew her. We'd met maybe 4 or 5 times at family gatherings over the years. She was wearing scrubs from the veterinary hospital where she worked as a wildlife specialist. Her face showed a mix of genuine embarrassment and secondhand shame. I opened the door before she could knock. Ethan, I'm so sorry about all of this, she said immediately, hands up in a gesture of peace. Whitney asked me to come get her stuff. She said you two had a fight, but I already heard what actually happened. Brianna called me last night and told me everything. I'm sorry. That was cruel. And you didn't deserve it. Her tone wasn't apologetic in that fake, enabling way. It was the voice of someone who'd finally seen her younger sister for who she really was and felt genuine shame about the family connection. That's how something neither of us planned began. Harper didn't just grab the boxes and leave. She paused in the doorway, looking around the cabin with actual interest. The walls covered with wildlife photography I'd taken over the years. Hawks, deer, mountain lions captured on trail cameras, field guides stacked neatly by the wood stove, handmade wooden utensils I'd carved during long winter evenings when weather kept me indoors, topographic maps of the surrounding wilderness area marked with trail notes and wildlife sighting locations. "I've always been curious what this place looked like inside," she commented quietly. Whitney posted photos of it constantly, but they never showed the real character, just the corners that framed well. A small, surprised smile escaped me as I picked up one of the boxes. She only photographed the parts that fit her aesthetic. The real substance didn't make good content. Harper helped me carry boxes to her car. Unlike her sister, she didn't talk to fill silence or fish for compliments. She moved with efficient purpose, asked where I wanted things placed, worked without performative effort. As we loaded the trunk, she asked real questions about my work. Not polite small talk, but genuine curiosity about the environmental programs I ran, species we helped rehabilitate in the area, challenges of teaching conservation in an age where most people experience nature exclusively through screens. "I've always admired what you do," she told me as we placed the last box carefully in her trunk. "Teaching actual respect for nature instead of just Instagramming it for likes. That has real value beyond social media metrics." I looked at her more carefully then. Mid-30s, maybe, though I'd never asked her age. She handled Whitney's expensive belongings with distance and resignation, like she was moving props from a play she'd never wanted a role in. There was intelligence behind her eyes, and something else. A kind of weariness with her sister's lifestyle that I recognized immediately. "You never mentioned you shared an interest in conservation," I said, genuinely curious now. "Because Whitney doesn't pay attention to anything that doesn't directly serve her social media presence," Harper replied with a dry, humorless laugh. "I studied environmental science before switching to veterinary medicine. Still care deeply about it, but it's not Instagram-worthy enough for my sister's influencer crowd. Not enough aesthetic appeal, I guess." We stood there in the afternoon sun filtering through pine trees, and I realized I was talking to someone who actually understood why this work mattered. Not because it photographed well with the right filter or impressed strangers online, but because it was fundamentally important work that needed doing, whether anyone was watching or not. "Would you want to grab coffee sometime?" I asked, surprising myself with the spontaneity. "Talk about actual conservation work instead of complaining about people who fake it for content?" Her smile was genuine. Not practiced, not performed, just real. I genuinely like that. What started as coffee at a small diner became a regular thing. We'd meet up once or twice a week, initially just talking shop. Harper worked at a veterinary hospital that specialized in wildlife rehabilitation. She'd spend her days treating injured raptors, orphaned foxes, deer that had been hit by cars. Her knowledge of animal behavior and emergency medical procedures was genuinely impressive, and she approached it with the same practical, no-nonsense mindset I brought to teaching survival skills. The diner became our spot. Nothing fancy, just a locally owned place halfway between her hospital and my cabin. Vinyl booths, good coffee, breakfast served all day. She'd tell me about the three-legged coyote she was rehabbing after it got caught in an illegal trap. I'd share stories about teaching city kids to identify poisonous plants and watching their faces light up when they realized nature was something they could understand, not just fear. Real conversations about real work. No performance required, no one trying to impress anyone. Just two people who'd found someone else who gave a damn about the same things. About 6 weeks in, Harper mentioned something that made the whole situation more interesting. "Whitney's been asking about you," she said carefully over coffee. "Wants to know if you've reached out, if I've seen you, whether you're seeing anyone. She's convinced you'll come back once you cool down from your overreaction." I laughed. Genuinely laughed for the first time in weeks. Is that how she's spinning it? I overreacted? She's telling people you couldn't handle an honest conversation about your relationship's future, that you stormed out of an expensive restaurant like a child and refused to answer her calls. Classic. She's the victim of my emotional immaturity. Harper's expression was carefully neutral. For what it's worth, Brianna told our entire family what actually happened. Whitney's version isn't landing the way she thinks it is. That was satisfying to hear, but I wasn't interested in Whitney's narrative. I was more interested in the woman sitting across from me who didn't need to lie about who she was to feel valuable. 2 months into knowing Harper, her family was planning their annual summer barbecue. Big gathering at her parents' house, Whole extended family, the works. She brought it up casually over lunch. My family does this thing every July, she said, pushing a French fry around her plate. Everyone comes, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole production. Whitney will definitely be there. She paused, meeting my eyes directly. I'd like you to come with me, but I understand if you don't want to deal with that situation. I'm not trying to start drama or make things awkward. I thought about it for approximately 5 seconds. I'll go. I'm not doing anything wrong, and I'm definitely not hiding from her. You sure? It might be uncomfortable. Harper, she publicly humiliated me at a restaurant after 3 years together, then got mad when I didn't accept being downgraded to her backup plan. I'm done being uncomfortable to spare her feelings. If she has a problem with me being there, that's her issue to manage. Harper's smile was small but genuine. Okay then. Fair warning though. My mom is going to love you. The barbecue was set for the following Saturday. Harper's parents lived in one of those nice Denver suburbs, where every house looked slightly different, but all cost roughly the same. Big yards, 2-car garages, manicured lawns. Her father was a retired civil engineer. Her mother taught elementary school for 30 years before retiring. Solid, practical people who'd raised their daughters with completely different results. We pulled up around 2 p.m. The driveway was already packed with vehicles. Her extended family took these gatherings seriously. I could hear music and conversation coming from the backyard before we even reached the front door. Patricia, Harper's mom, answered the door. She was mid-60s, with Harper's same direct gaze and no-nonsense demeanor. When she saw me, her face lit up with genuine warmth. Ethan, Harper's told us so much about your conservation work. I'm so glad you could make it. She pulled me into a real hug, not the performative kind Whitney's family had always given. And I'm very sorry about what happened with Whitney. That was inexcusable behavior. The bluntness caught me off guard in the best way. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate that. Come on back. Everyone's in the yard. Fair warning. You're about to meet approximately 40 people who will all ask what you do for work. Just tell them once, and they'll spread it around. Saves time. We walked through the house. Lived in, comfortable, full of family photos, documenting decades of gatherings, just like this one. The backyard was impressive, with a proper outdoor kitchen setup, multiple seating areas, and enough space for both kids playing and adults socializing. That's when I saw Whitney. She was standing near the outdoor bar, designer sundress and oversized sunglasses, phone in one hand capturing selfies with the other. When she turned and saw me walking in with Harper, her entire face went through a visible transformation. The practiced smile vanished instantly, replaced by pure shock, then rage, then this strange, desperate panic. She actually stumbled backward, nearly knocking over someone's drink. Her phone slipped from her hand, and she barely caught it. What is he doing here? The words came out loud enough for a significant portion of the party to hear, cutting through multiple conversations. Harper's voice stayed perfectly calm, almost clinical. Ethan is my guest. We've been seeing each other. The silence that followed was one of those rare moments where you could actually hear individual birds chirping in the surrounding trees. Time seemed to stop. Every conversation died mid-sentence. You're dating my ex-boyfriend? Whitney's voice climbed to a pitch that probably disturbed dogs in a 3-block radius. You mean the guy you publicly humiliated at an expensive restaurant before offering to demote to friends with benefits? Harper's tone remained matter-of-fact, surgical in its precision. Yes, that ex-boyfriend. Whitney's face went from white to deep red so fast, I briefly worried about her blood pressure. Her hands were shaking. Whether from rage or shock, I couldn't tell. This is betrayal. You knew I was planning to... Planning to what? Harper interrupted smoothly. Get back together with him after treating him like he wasn't good enough for you. That's not a plan, Whitney. That's delusion. Several of Whitney's friends, the same ones from the Meridian dinner, had been standing nearby. Brianna stepped forward, trying to play peacekeeper but clearly uncomfortable. This is really inappropriate, Harper. There's like sister code about these things. Harper's laugh was sharp, humorless. Sister code? Interesting concept coming from someone who sat silently while Whitney verbally destroyed someone who'd done nothing wrong. Where was your friendship code that night? Brianna's face flushed. She opened her mouth, closed it, then found sudden interest in her drink. No response to that. Whitney, seeing she was losing support, shifted tactics. The tears started. Perfect, practiced tears that had probably worked on countless people over the years. How could you do this to me? After everything I've been through? What exactly have you been through? Harper asked calmly. Breaking up with someone because he wasn't wealthy enough to maintain your Instagram lifestyle? I'm sorry, but that's not trauma. That's consequence. Patricia, who'd been watching from the kitchen window, finally intervened. She walked over with the kind of purposeful stride that meant someone was about to get told the truth. Whitney, that is enough. You ended that relationship in the cruelest way possible. You don't get to dictate what happens afterward. But he's my ex! Whitney was in full meltdown mode now, voice breaking. It's humiliating that my own sister would... You humiliated yourself, Richard, their father, said quietly from his seat near the grill. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. He rarely got involved in family drama, preferring to observe from the sidelines. You treated a good man like garbage because his bank account didn't match your Instagram expectations. Don't expect sympathy now that he's moved on. The support from Harper's family was immediate and unanimous. Even Whitney's younger cousin, a teenager who'd been watching the whole scene unfold with obvious entertainment, rolled her eyes and muttered, "You literally posted about outgrowing him. Why do you even care?" Whitney had posted about the breakup, of course, vague booked about choosing growth over comfort and refusing to settle for mediocrity. Her comment section had been full of supportive messages from followers who didn't know the real story. But everyone in this backyard knew the truth. The humiliation on Whitney's face was total. She'd come to this family gathering probably expecting sympathy, maybe even hoping I'd show up alone and desperate. Instead, she was watching her entire family support my relationship with her sister, while calling out her behavior. Ashley, Brianna, and Whitney's other influencer friends formed a protective circle around her, shooting judgmental looks at Harper and me. They couldn't defend Whitney's actions, so they fell back on solidarity through silence and dirty looks. But the rest of the party? They kept going like nothing had happened. Patricia brought me a plate of food and introduced me to Harper's grandparents, who wanted to hear about my conservation work. Richard asked intelligent questions about wildlife population management in Colorado. Harper's uncle, who worked for the National Park Service, spent 20 minutes discussing trail maintenance challenges and environmental education program funding. Real conversations with people who cared about substance. Meanwhile, Whitney held court in the corner with her dwindling friend group, occasionally shooting daggers at Harper and me. About 2 hours in, I saw Whitney film herself crying in her car. Phone positioned perfectly. Lighting angled just right, even through tears. Creating content from her humiliation. Unable to just experience an emotion without monetizing it for her followers. Harper and I stayed for the rest of the party. We ate good food, had better conversations, and enjoyed being around people who valued authenticity over performance. As we were leaving, Patricia pulled us both aside. "I'm glad you two found each other," she said quietly, hands on both our shoulders. "Whitney could have had what you're building. Someone who valued her for more than her appearance or social media following. She made a different choice. That's not your burden to carry." The drive back to my cabin was peaceful. Harper was quiet, processing the confrontation, but not stressed. Just thoughtful. "That went better than I expected," she finally said. "Your family's solid. Much better than people who judge your worth by your tax bracket. They've been wanting someone to call Whitney out for years. They just needed someone to break the pattern of enabling her." Over the next months, Harper and I got serious. Not Instagram official serious. We didn't post relationship photos or make announcements. We just built something real, away from social media validation. Weekends were spent hiking trails I'd scouted for survival courses. Harper would bring her field identification guides. I'd point out edible plants and natural water sources. We'd camp under stars without checking our phones, cook over campfires, fall asleep to owls hunting in the darkness. Actual connection with nature and each other. She started bringing injured wildlife to my property when the hospital was at capacity. We built proper rehabilitation enclosures together, took turns with night feedings for orphaned baby foxes, worked in comfortable silence repairing fences and treating wounds. This was real partnership, building something that mattered with someone who shared your core values. Meanwhile, Whitney's social media presence was steadily imploding. Her followers started noticing patterns. She'd been through 4 serious relationships in 8 months, each guy lasting just long enough to get photographed at expensive restaurants before she'd dump them with vague posts about energy misalignment or choosing authentic growth. The comments section turned vicious. "Another rich boyfriend already? Girl, maybe you're the common denominator here. Starting to think the problem isn't all these guys. This is getting embarrassing to watch." Her engagement rates crashed hard. Brands that had sponsored content started quietly dropping her when they realized her audience was there for the drama, not genuine product interest. The carefully curated perfect life was collapsing because she couldn't maintain the illusion anymore. When your whole brand is aspirational lifestyle and you're clearly miserable, followers lose interest fast. Through mutual friends, I heard she'd tried contacting me multiple times through burner accounts I'd blocked without even reading. She'd shown up at my workplace twice, once trying to intercept me in the parking lot, once actually entering the building. My supervisor, who knew the whole situation, had security escort her out both times. The second incident got her officially trespassed from the property. Harper and I had been together about 10 months when we started seriously discussing our future. Not just casual, where should we vacation conversations, but real planning about combining our professional goals. What if we opened our own facility? Harper suggested one night. We were sitting on my cabin porch after a long day, watching meteor showers streak across the sky. Combine wildlife rehabilitation with environmental education. Teach people conservation while actually doing conservation work. Make it accessible to schools and communities. The idea immediately resonated. We spent months researching funding opportunities, looking at grant programs, mapping out exactly what we'd need. Harper's veterinary connections brought potential partners from wildlife organizations. My teaching experience attracted interest from state parks looking for comprehensive educational programs. We found 40 acres of mountain property that checked every box: mix of forest and meadow, natural water source running through it, existing structures we could renovate. The previous owner had used it as a private retreat and built solid foundations we could expand on. The purchase price was steep, cleaning out both our savings completely, but it was worth it for the potential. Building the facility took 2 years of brutal physical work. We did most construction ourselves to save money, cleared hiking trails, built proper animal rehabilitation enclosures, meeting state requirements, renovated existing buildings into classrooms and medical spaces. Harper's veterinary credentials attracted collaborations with international conservation groups. My established reputation brought students and clients from across the region. Within 18 months, we'd employed 12 full-time staff members. Our programs were booked 3 months in advance. The facility was featured in outdoor education journals. For the first time in both our careers, we felt like we were making real, measurable impact beyond just talking about conservation. When we decided to get married, there was only one location that made sense: the education center itself, surrounded by everything we'd built together from nothing. Harper wanted every single detail to reflect our actual values, not perform for social media. Catering from local sustainable farms, decorations made from natural materials that would biodegrade, invitations requesting donations to wildlife rehabilitation programs instead of traditional gifts. Every decision was made with genuine enthusiasm to share our happiness with people who understood what we'd created, not to impress strangers online. The planning process was pure joy. No stress about flower arrangements, photographing well, or finding the perfect Instagram aesthetic. Just 2 people excited to celebrate their partnership with family and friends who actually cared about them. 3 days before the wedding, while Harper was finalizing last-minute catering logistics and I was setting up ceremony chairs in our outdoor amphitheater area, Whitney appeared on the property. She walked toward me like a ghost from a life I'd left behind, and I barely recognized her. The designer clothes were completely gone, replaced by cheap, ill-fitting outfits that looked like they came from discount clearance racks. Her hair was unwashed and pulled back messily. No makeup, not the natural beauty Instagram no makeup, but genuinely bare-faced exhaustion. The polished influencer aesthetic had shattered entirely. She'd lost probably 15 pounds, not in a healthy way, and her skin had that dull look that comes from stress and poor nutrition. She stopped about 10 feet away, trying to project confidence she clearly didn't possess anymore. "Ethan, I know this isn't ideal timing, but I have important information. Things you need to know about Harper before you make the biggest mistake of your life." The way she delivered it, practiced, rehearsed for maximum dramatic impact, just triggered pity instead of anger. "Whitney, you're trespassing on private property. You need to leave immediately. I'm trying to save you from making a terrible mistake." Her voice climbed to that familiar dramatic pitch. "She manipulated you. You're just revenge against me. She saw an opportunity and took advantage of your vulnerability. Everything you've built here, she's using your work to elevate herself." I set down the chair I'd been positioning and looked at her directly. "You need to hear how ridiculous that sounds. Harper's a licensed veterinarian with her own career. I'm a survival instructor. We built this together because we share actual values, not because either of us needed to use the other. You're only marrying her for her family connections and veterinary credentials," Whitney continued, voice getting louder and more desperate. "I know about your financial struggles before we broke up. This whole facility is proof you're trying to show me you're not the failure I said you were. Everything is just an elaborate revenge plot because you couldn't handle being rejected." That's when Harper emerged from the catering tent, accompanied by several family members who'd arrived early to help with wedding setup. Everyone could clearly hear what Whitney was saying. Her accusations echoed across the property. The silence that followed was profound. Nobody knew whether to laugh at the absurdity or just walk away. The gap between Whitney's accusations and our actual reality was so massive, it was almost funny. Thriving conservation facility, healthy relationship, wedding celebration about to happen. Harper took a measured breath before responding, using that calm, rational voice she employed when explaining complicated medical procedures to worried pet owners. Whitney, unlike you, I actually know who Ethan is. I don't need a filtered, edited version of his life for Instagram content. I accept him completely, with his successes and his struggles and everything in between. That's what separates a genuine relationship from one that only exists for social media appearances. Patricia, who'd been helping set up tables, stepped forward. She looked tired, years of dealing with Whitney's drama etched in her expression. That is enough, Whitney. You lost the right to opinions about this relationship when you publicly humiliated Ethan. He and Harper built something real and authentic while you've continued blaming everyone else for your own choices and their consequences. But Whitney couldn't accept defeat. She never could. You're all being manipulated. He's using Harper's success and family connections to build the life he could never achieve on his own. Can't any of you see he's the same mediocre person he always was? He's just better at hiding it now. Then Harper's teenage cousin, now 17 and apparently done with family drama, broke the tension with perfect teenage directness. Okay, but if he's so terrible, why are you here trying to ruin his wedding? This is giving you still want him back energy. The comment was so brutally on point that nobody knew how to respond. Whitney froze completely, mouth slightly open, utterly without words for the first time. In seconds, whatever credibility she'd tried to build collapsed in front of everyone watching. Harper pulled out her phone and called our property security. Yes, we had security for the facility. Within minutes, 2 staff members arrived. Whitney was escorted to her car, while still attempting to shout increasingly incoherent things about manipulation and revenge plots. Her exit was so chaotic and dramatic that it actually served as perfect emotional cleansing before the actual ceremony. Well, Harper said calmly, as Whitney's car disappeared down the access road, at least there are no more ghosts haunting our celebration. After that confrontation, everything was peaceful and perfect. Whitney disappeared from our lives after that wedding day confrontation, but her presence had served as a reminder of what I'd never allow again. Someone confusing my life choices with weakness or mistaking my values for lack of ambition. Harper came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and we stood there in comfortable silence watching bats hunt insects over the water. 3 years after the wedding, our education center was featured in a major conservation documentary. Harper had become regionally recognized for innovative wildlife rehabilitation techniques. My survival programs were being adopted by state parks and schools across the western United States. We'd expanded the facility, hired 8 more staff members, and were training other educators to replicate our model. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.